Now, there are three fundamental limitations that every one of us has. So, this question is neither asked by Arjuna nor answered by Krishna in the beginning of their friendship. And I think we also spoke last time about Dandam, Dharmam, and Mukti. Edward O. Wilson, he says, we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology.
We've started this 3-podcast series with an inquiry around what is it to be a Dharmic leader, what is an Indic approach to leadership.
Fortunately, in India, it's not been wiped out completely. The Yoga Sutra talks about something similar. Dukkha Anushayi and Sukha Anushayi, which means I experience pain and I want to make sure I keep running away from pain and pain never catches up with me. It's a good thing for a politician to have large percentage of people feeling that they're oppressed. The oppressors, you're the oppressed, I'm the savior. He uses it in ways that are completely dharmic. As a person still holding on to Paleolithic emotions, which is flight, fight, right? If I'm still that tribal man who looks at another tribal human being and recognizes, you know what, more than any other animal around, this animal, which looks like me, is the most dangerous thing on the earth.
Welcome to the Bodhi Sangha Podcast, where we come together to listen, learn, and support each other in uncertain times. We're a community exploring how to face today's challenges with wisdom, trust, and care. Join us as we walk this journey of change, rooted in connection and guided by life's deeper wisdom.
Namaste and welcome to this 3-podcast series. Raghu, Pranam, and what a beautiful day to have this conversation today, Dasera, and today's Gandhiji's birthday also, and I'm really glad to have you here.
And Shastriji's birthday.
And Lal Bahadur Shastri's birthday as well. We've started this 3-podcast series with an inquiry around what is it to be a Dharmic leader, what is an Indic approach to leadership. And last time when Raghu, you and I spoke, we said first let's look at the context in which this leadership itself needs to occur. And really looking at the last 500 years odd, which have been a lot of extraction, a lot of exploitation, and leadership being located in that context where slavery, colonization have been dominant forces. And really starting with that question of saying, how do we reimagine that? How do we reimagine leadership? And without questioning the context, there is no way to relook at leadership. And the last conversation was very, very enriching to really acknowledge how difficult the context is and what has it brought the world to. And I think where we ended was a sort of a cliffhanger saying, okay, if this is where the world is, now what? Right? And that is where it was really. And when we were also talking about this podcast and this session, you had summarized this era in a very beautiful quote. So I thought maybe that's a good starting point. Saying, how do you look at today's era now?
See, the quote I was sharing with you is by a person called Edward O. Wilson. Right? In a book, if I remember right, it's called The Social Conquest of the Earth. He says that the current problem of humanity, he summarizes like this. He says, we have Paleolithic emotions, right? Medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And this is a terrifyingly dangerous situation, right? And he also goes on to say that the current crisis is fundamentally because of this. Yeah, I find this a very succinct and a clear depiction of the problem. Yeah, so I guess that's where we have to start, no?
Yes, what is it to lead in a world where emotions are primal, institutions are medieval, which is also true. I mean, majoritarian democracy, for example, so many of our ways actually are predate and like hundreds of years old without an upgrade. And like you said, technology is now destructive levels at both nuclear, bio, AI, and so on. So it's a helpless feeling at one level, but also there's a part of me that is excited and charged by what is possible. So
Yeah, like the Chinese say, no, may you be born in interesting times. So we are born in very interesting times and we have to see what to do about it.
Yeah, Raghu, my first question was starting with what is a stance, right? So this is the context, but just as a warrior has a stance, does the leader have a stance? Does the leader have a stand? Is there a set of ideas, assumptions, insights, values? I don't know. So how would you what is foundational now in this context when it comes to leading? What must one remember?
The Edward Wilson's quote is pointing very clearly to saying, unless my inner being is anchored in something uh, intelligent, okay, not the cleverness that we show, but true intelligence, like a deep consciousness that helps us understand what the earth is all about, what is reality all about. Yeah, whatever we build will simply reflect this. There is no, it's an inevitable. See, at one level, there's a certain kind of an energy of growth that cannot be stopped. Everything that's alive keeps on growing.
Hmm, hmm,
And at one level, there is a kind of an evolution also happening. So, what's the fundamental difference between, let's say, a primate and a human being? Yeah, we're supposed to be 98% or whatever, like a primate, no?
hmm, hmm,
But what makes the difference?
hmm,
Right? In my understanding, it's something like this. Now, there are three fundamental limitations that every one of us has. Yeah. One limitation that I have is time. Right? I have X number of years, 70, 80, whatever, nowadays, to live. But through language and through the ability to learn and be taught by my elders, I'm spanning something like 5,000 years of time, which is incredible. I don't think any other animal is able to do that. The other limitation I have is my body. I'm transcending the limitations of my body. Right now, we are talking through a technological innovation.
yeah,
I drive a car or whatever. So, all of these tools and technologies have made me exceed my physical power enormously.
yeah,
And the third limitation we have is a limitation of space. How much space can I occupy?
hmm,
Right? I can only defend so much of space. Right? But when we learn how to organize, create role differentials and things like that,
hmm,
we can really occupy and defend a niche which is very, very large. Yeah. So if you see what has happened, let's say the history of mankind, this fundamental energy has been growing. Language has been growing, knowledge has been growing, technology is growing, and so on. Our ability to organize is growing. But like Wilson says, our psyches are still very primitive. So, what have we done with this energy, which is an inborn thing? Yeah, we've overpowered it with politics and ideas of ownership and dominance and all of that, which are very primal, which are very primitive, which are very tribal. So, if you look at any system, I don't think the problem is with the system per se. Just to give you an example, we talk about the golden age, let's say of Vijayanagaram, when art flourished and literature flourished and there was a lot of discovery, a lot of freedom. Okay, they talk about these ages. It was a monarchy. All that was needed was for that monarch to be like the Ramaraja
hmm,
kind of thing, the kind of kingship, the dharma, Raja Dharma we spoke about. So, like we said, we have delegated some power to this person. He uses it in ways that are completely dharmic.
hmm,
So, what happens? These three forces of a human developmental evolutionary thing will all flower in ways that are conducive to collective growth. And I think we also spoke last time about Dandam, Dharmam, and Mukti. So he will wield the Danda in ways that ensure ahimsa between people and so on. At the same time, safety. Now, why would I encroach upon your freedom? Only if I'm unsafe,
hmm,
right? So he ensures that people understand dharma through the educational system. Therefore, mukti, like freedom, freedom from fear of death, freedom from craving, so on and so forth. It's possible to develop that. Now, whether I develop this deeper self-reflective, introspective ability or not, right? If the dandam is wielded properly and some dharmic ways are taught, I will use whatever system there is perfectly well. Okay, they talk about the Greek democratic times. Okay, the way they describe it sounds very good, except that the secret is that very few people are allowed to vote at that time, and there was slavery. And so, but you get the idea, na? Any system. Now we have a system today. Just the other day, I was listening to Prashant Kishore speaking about the caste census. Caste census. Now he asks a very, very important question. He says, "ठीक है, we've done this census. We've discovered that this percentage of people, whatever, have been depressed, educationally, so on." He says everybody knew it. We're 75 years since independence. This is not new knowledge. If this situation persists, it's because the system is corrupt, right? So the politicians will promise something, but they will not deliver. Okay, people like Sainath and other people have written about it quite a bit. How it's a good thing for a politician to have large percentage of people feeling that they're oppressed. So he comes out like a great savior and points to somebody else and says, they are the oppressors, you're the oppressed, I'm the savior. Right? Now, if you take organizations which are largely in the commercial space, what are they saying? They're saying we are not concerned about all this political thing. Yeah, on the face of it, right? They're saying just give us a space where we can operate and make profit, right? And last time we explored this. Now, what does the economics say? The economics is enabling us to just make profit without responsibility.
Yeah.
The colonizing concept that has been converted into an economic concept. Yeah, these are all realities in front of us. Now, unless I am willing to go beyond the kind of fears, the kind of anxieties and things like that are created today, right? Unless I'm really evolved as a human being first, how will I ever use any system in a way that is truly enabling flourishing? I will just either exploit the conditions for my personal power, or I will exploit the conditions for personal profit. So this process, now this first inward process of some kind of, at least an awakening, it doesn't have to be a transformation, that by holding on to these divisions, by not working on myself in a way that there is greater and greater understanding, right? If I don't do these things, I am condemned to call myself a leader, but actually exploit conditions for my own personal benefit. And if I'm more clever than you, I can easily do that. So every one of us, if I have a capability, I also have a choice. Okay, I have some talents that are greater than yours. I have a choice. Knowledge, for example, let's take a simple thing. I know more than you about something. I can either choose to teach you and help you to grow, or I can exploit you because you don't know. That's a personal choice.
True.
Yeah. If you look at me as a person still holding on to Paleolithic emotions, which is flight, fight, right? If I'm still that tribal man who looks at another tribal human being and recognizes, you know what, more than any other animal around, this animal, which looks like me, is the most dangerous thing on the earth, right? So I start tribal wars. Question we have to ask is, what does it take for me to transcend these very base animalic tendencies in me and evolve from the Paleolithic emotions? I actually don't agree with Edward Wilson on medieval institutions. Medieval institutions are just huge Paleolithic systems.
They're expressions of Paleolithic
Yeah.
systems.
Same
Yeah, yeah.
emotions, same fears, same othering. Instead of
Yeah.
one tribe othering another,
Hmm.
it's a slightly larger tribe that others. Okay? And inside that system, you're keeping that system together through many oppressive ways.
Yeah, Raghu, I think just to also locate this, so from what you're sharing, the context in which one needs to do inner work also and awaken, I think just wanted to explore a bit of that more. And I thought I'd locate it also in my own context. When you
Sure.
spoke about cleverness, I could totally relate, no? Cleverness in manipulation, in usage of words, in how do you kind of look at opportunities but exclude others, and so many small and subtle ways as well. And
Yeah.
when I was reflecting on it, the question that was coming was, what is the uh, lasting source of security that a leader can really have? Because when I look at myself, when I feel unsafe or when I feel competitive or when my conditioned self comes in, then I always want to kind of, I become narrow, I shrink. It becomes about me or mine or my tribe. When I feel safe and I relax into a larger context of humanity, when I feel safe, I'm like, this is about all of us, it's about the planet. And how does one stay anchored in this sense of larger? And that when that security is threatened, also there is there is some grounding which is unshakable, right? So where is that unshakable ground that we can carry within ourselves and what's its source?
See, when you're, this is a question that's actually been asked many, many times. This is not the first time this question is asked. Okay, if you take any Upanishad, this is the fundamental question. What is it that the entire earth rests on?
Hmm.
Yeah, or if you take Prashnopanishad, what is the origin of life? Questions like this have always been around. The unfortunate thing is not very many people ask these questions. Now, let's say you're asking this question.
Hmm.
Yeah, the way I would start is by saying, how are you defining life? If you're defining life in external forms, right, you'll never find security anywhere. What we do when we look at the world and see that I'm different from you, therefore there's danger or opportunity, which is what we do with our cleverness, right? If we are clever, I convert danger into opportunity. I can do it better than you. If I'm not so smart, I become more and more caught in my anxiety because I know my limitations of capability. So if I'm defining myself and the world at this level, then there is no safety. There is only seeking refuges, one refuge or the other. And the Buddha has made a very, very interesting statement. Yeah, he said that every human being experiences hurt. And when we experience hurt, we go seeking refuges, believing that a refuge will ensure that I never feel hurt. The Yoga Sutra talks about something similar. It talks about dukkha anushayi and sukha anushayi, which means I experience pain and I want to make sure I keep running away from pain and pain never catches up with me. If I experience pleasure, I make sure that I run after pleasure and hang on to it,
Right.
hoping that it will never change. Right? So these are the refuges. Then he talks about 4 kinds of refuges. He says, we seek refuge in other people. We seek refuge in power and material wealth. We seek refuge in knowledge. And we seek refuge in the idea of God. Then he goes on to say that we can discover that other people are not secure refuges.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay? It's also relatively easy to see that just possession and power is also not a refuge against pain,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so on. But he says the other 2, which is knowledge and the idea of God, are of the nature of belief.
Hmm. Hmm.
And therefore, there is much violence that happens before a person discovers that these are not true refuges.
Hmm.
And it's
Okay.
only when a person stops seeking these refuges and starts going inward that it takes the first step to end sorrow. He says this in the Dhammapada. Okay, this is a profound insight. Okay, Yoga Sutra says something similar, but not in such a succinct, clear way. Yeah, if you look at what has happened to mankind, no, this is what it is. Instead of recognizing that everything outside is first of all transitory, and secondly, none of it is mine, it's all shared.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't possess anything in this world, right? I cannot. So, like I was saying before, what enables me to possess it? Some legalistic paper.
Right. Backed by some violence or some backed by something that
Backed by
enforces it.
violence, because you know
Yeah.
that one of the definitions of governments is it is the power that can use legitimate violence. So, what do? One set of people, and you and I unfortunately belong to this privileged class right now. We have this piece of paper which is called a legal possession, ownership, so on and so forth. And this is historically come about for a long period of time. And what do you do now? For example, until the British colonization of India, land could not be owned in the way it's being owned now. Okay, there were systems that said, stillers, there are lands that are given. If you go back to the older system, okay, a village had so much of land,
Hmm.
right? And there's so many fields and so many farmers, let's say. So there were three kinds of lands. One is the fertile land. The second one is something that's being used for a while and is losing its fertility. Third one is left fallow with some practices done so that it regains fertility. And the land rotates. So what is yours today may not be yours tomorrow, and so on. And then there are other roles that have to be played. Okay, for example, there's the role of a person looking after the canals.
Hmm.
Okay, the other role is of people who are looking after chatrams. When people go on pilgrimage, there are places.
Hmm.
And these chatrams are places where any traveler can come, stay for a couple of nights. Also, any destitute women in that area, these women are allowed to come and stay there. If there's a woman whose husband has run away, whatever, and she's pregnant, she can stay there till the child is born. Things like this. Now, it's like a very, very nice social institution that gives safety, like you were saying.
Hmm.
Now, these are manned by, let's say, some intelligent, trustworthy people.
Hmm.
So on. That was the structure. And if you read some of the books by Dharampalji or Claude Alvarez, they describe this in detail. The taxation system. The taxation system, for example, was very simple. As soon as a harvest happens, the first 1/5 or so goes to the tiller. The second 1/5 to all the artisans who have to live and whose work is absolutely important for the farmer. The next 1/5 is given to these people who have to look after these other social systems. The next 1/5 is retained in the local temples for, if there's a famine and so on. The last 1/5 is given to the king, the big, whoever is the ruler of that place. So a large temple, like the big temple of Tanjore, would get this 1/5 or whatever from a lot of places. Yeah, or it would be given certain lands, certain income by the king, with which it would run free food, free medicine, free education, and so on. Right? Now, this is a very interesting welfare-ish kind of system.
Hmm.
Now, when the British came and they brought in taxes, now let me add one more thing. Now, in a condition like this, if there was a famine or there was a problem, then the taxes to the top level will not be paid. And then the next level, and then the next level, and so on. So it's a very, very interesting overall system. This system has been completely broken after the British came because they started taxing and they started giving pattas and so on. And if you go into the history, it's very shameful. A lot of people who were, let's say, looking after the chatrams or looking after the canals, they were getting a certain tax from a set of people. Simply, they were the more learned people. They went to the British government and said, look, I'm getting the tax from all of this. This is my land. So they were given the pattas because these fellows promised to pay the taxes. The tax was fixed, right? So what happens? All the local artisans, the musicians, the teachers, everybody is affected because I have now got the land. I'm the zamindar. What's the best way of making profit? Cut
Extract
out
as much. Yeah.
expenses, make sure the income stays.
Yeah.
So I slowly start squeezing out all the responsibilities I have to do, which is looking after the chatram or looking after this or that,
Yeah.
right? Cut off my expenses and retain my income. And I now got the law on my side. So we've got into, and we can't blame the British for this. We looked at this and said, wow, man, this is a great thing for us, and grabbed power. So in various conditions like this, right, under every crisis, there is an opportunity to either shift the system towards something that is more dharmic or more self-centered. Okay, now this way of managing this institution definitely is not medieval.
It's not. Yeah.
It's not, right? It's got possibilities. You know how to grow it, and maybe if you place technology on top of it, one could. This is what Gandhiji was referring to now when he was talking about the oceanic circles. He said, let's go back to the earlier systems. When he spoke about the beautiful tree and the education system, this is the system he was referring to. Yeah, and Claude Alvarez goes on to describe what happened when the taxation thing was overturned. These are all the ifs and buts, no? So if the individuals who had power or so-called leaders at that time were enlightened, and many of them didn't fall into this trap, or they tried to fight it, but they got killed off or something. So most of the people who are now called criminal tribes, for example, we still call them criminal tribes, were all groups of people who fought the British and said, your laws are not dharmic. We won't accept it. They didn't just lose. There were other Indians willing to go along. Like somebody has said, the people who shot down the Sikhs who had gathered in Jallianwala Bagh were Indian sepoys, man. The guy who gave the order might have been a white guy, but the sepoys who pulled up their guns and used it were Indians.
Right.
So this is something very critical to explore. Now, why is it that given a choice to evolve inwardly away from this Paleolithic fears and stand up for what you know clearly is the right thing, we make the choice towards the Paleolithic? So that's the first thing. The first question is, where is my inner safety coming from? Is it coming from knowing what is right? And it's not such a difficult thing to know what is right. All of us have a answer, right?
Yeah.
And to know what is self-centered. So that's the first question.
And one has to keep watching it all the time in the sense, where is it located?
Practice. You have to wake up and say, hey, I'm doing the wrong thing. The Yoga Sutras are very clear. You can either go on the Bhoga cycle, which is just saying, okay, this is me and I need it. This is my pleasure seeking. This is my pain avoidance. I create my little refuge, and from behind the refuge, I keep guns trained for people I don't like, and I have this grabbing machine for things that I like, and I keep doing this. This is the Bhoga cycle, running behind consequences. Or I can go into what they call the yoga cycle. The yogic cycle is to understand, learn where your appetites are coming from, what your appetites are doing to the world. Does it help everybody to flourish? Because everybody is a human being. They have the same appetites that I have. Can I recognize the universality of being human? And can I feed that? Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, who am I? Am I a human being first, then an Indian, then a Hindu or a Christian or whatever it is? It doesn't matter. If I am anchored in being a human being And if I'm anchored in doing things right for the human flourishing, that's the first step. I don't see too many leaders today who are talking about this.
Right.
I see only sectarian leaders. I see people who are X or Y or Z first. I don't even know if there's any humanness in some of them. The kind of policies and the kind of decisions they take and the number of people who suffer because of it. I mean, imagine. I mean, you're running a company that's making sugar water. Yeah, you're polluting the land. You're denuding the land that you have your factory on of water, right? You know that sugar water is the source of most diseases, of inflammation, cancer is fed by it, and so on, right? There's enough knowledge about this all over. Neither is that knowledge spread, nor are these kind of companies closed.
Right.
Enormous resources. And some of these are touted as success stories.
Raghu, I'm wondering, I mean, yeah, so I completely agree with what you're sharing. And I want to go into what the individual should do or what's a framework for that. But just one question before that that comes to me is if the structures in which the individual is embedded themselves are have a flaw at their core. For example, a corporate that is kind of constantly having to maximize shareholder value, its shares are being traded, the CEO is under pressure, or a government that has to preserve a majority to stay in power. So I'm wondering how much does the individual versus the system and the institution in which they're embedded, kind of how do they interplay? Is it about not cooperating with unjust institutions? Is it about creating your own with challenge? Like, isn't there an impact of the structures in which the individual is acting and the value systems those structures contain?
See, where I am, Abhishek, I don't want to get distracted by these big questions.
Hmm, hmm,
I don't know the answer to any of them. All that I know is that the energy that feeds all of these systems and says whether the system is right or wrong is the human being and the psyche of the human being.
Sure, sure.
I can start with by saying, look, I would like to make choices which are as dharmic as possible. You can turn around and ask me, is every choice I make dharmic? No, it's not. Yeah, I'm living in this world, I'm using a car, I'm adding to the CO2 pollution. My CO2 footstep is not the most ideal.
Hmm, hmm,
Most choices I make, the way I use my energy, the way I use my knowledge, and so on, definitely is based on choice making. Where, as far as I know, I'm going to put this energy into something that is flourishing.
hmm,
Yeah, these are choices. No, whether I have a plastic bag in which I do my shopping or not is a con game. The real issue is, will I work for a company that advertises for whitening cream?
hmm.
I was offered a job in ITC. I refused. When I finished college, finished my IIT, this thing, it was very easy to go abroad. But almost every scholarship you would get would be backed by NASA or something like this, because America was still in the Vietnam War time. So the amount of spending that happened in educational systems to feed the war machine was very high. I just couldn't make that choice. Partly because I had already been infected by Dharampalji and company. Yeah. The question was very simple. What do I serve with my energy? Can I serve something like the genuine development of people, or do I serve the war machine? These are questions that individuals can ask, leaders can ask, and see what do we do. Okay, there is the practical consideration. If Pakistan comes and attacks me tomorrow, will I defend my country or not? I will defend my country. I may not pick up the gun, but I'll certainly use my energies to help people who are in distress, so on and so forth. This is the Dharma Sankata that we have to navigate every day. Okay. Now, I'm not at all saying be idealistic and all of that. Yeah, because Gandhiji, whatever brilliant things he did, he was also absolutist. And what a price we are paying for his absolutism. Yeah, so being absolutist doesn't work. So we have to, this is what I would look at now. We learn from these people, and there is a very interesting thing called the Hamsa Kshira Nyayam.
Okay.
Yeah, which says if you put a little bit of milk into water, I've seen this, it's phenomenal. Yeah, if there's a lake, small pond or a lake in which there are swans, and you pour a bit of milk, the milk will kind of disappear. You can't, it'll very soon seem to have got dissolved in the water. But the swan will come there, put its beak and start pulling in, and you can see the milk forming in its beak and going inside. I think the more we help young people through our education system and so on to do this, we can gather from the enormous wealth of knowledge
Wisdom
that
and
we've
draw
created
from,
so far, draw the things that will help a dharmic choice rather than help put my energy into an adharmic choice.
Sure.
So of course you have to learn a few things for that, and and there are enough practices already to help you look at this, no, to make you sensitive to your emotional content. Yeah, because if I'm not even sensitive about it, what happens? I get captured by it. That is the Paleolithic emotion types. No? I just get captured by it. But today, human beings are evolved enough. That's the whole rasa theory and the dance and music and all that. That is in Indian classical training, helps us become extremely sensitive to where the emotion is coming from. What is the emotion doing to us? Okay, the central thing in yoga, which is dhyana. And there's a lovely sutra, this dhyana heyaha tad vrittayaha. It says the seeds, I have both types of seeds in me. I have seeds that will help me be a Bhima or a Pandava. I have seeds that will help me become a Duryodhana. If I'm paying attention, okay, dhyana is not sitting here and saying Coca-Cola or whatever they're talking about. Okay. Dhyana is this attentiveness to what's happening in me. So can I really be very attentive, sensitive to what my triggers are? What is the source of my action? Where is my being located? Okay. In doing what I'm doing, what am I really doing? The central question that Arjuna asks, and this is the central question that is discussed in the Gita. Can I seriously ask this question? To answer this, I have to be sensitive, no?
Absolutely. Where I'm coming from, where I'm
Where
located,
am I
and
coming from?
what's going on within me.
Right. So this question is neither asked by Arjuna nor answered by Krishna in the beginning of their friendship. This guy has gone through 13 years of yoga and looking at his shadows through the Ajnatavasa, so on and so forth. Then when he says, hey, look at yourself, Arjuna can actually look at himself, right? And discover how to anchor his being in what in the Gita is called the Sthita Prajna. Yeah, where I'm anchored in this silence. I'm anchored in a complete inner security, like you're asking me. Okay, that's the sthiti. But this sthiti is not to be blind to everything else. I'm awake and alive and anchored in the face of a war. Not even the situation you and I are talking about. Not should I buy Coca-Cola or not. Right? In the face of war. Yeah. And then Arjuna has to make the choice, yeah? Do I kill or not? Somebody's coming to attack me. What do I do? Do I say ahimsa, ahimsa, or do I protect myself, which is true ahimsa? Do I allow an adharmic force to take over, or do I act from a dharmic space? So where am I located? Where is my being? Where is the central energy coming from is the first very, very critical question.
Sure.
Right? And leadership to me is not a set of actions. It's not what I do. It is who am I? In doing what I'm doing, what am I really doing? In doing what I'm doing, who am I being? This is now being talked about in the Western, being-centered leadership and so on. I think it's extremely important. This is a very good direction. So once my being is in the right place, once I'm sensitive to who I am, what my limitations are, what my motivations are, and so on, I'll be humble enough to take help when I need to.
Yeah,
I'm not going to try and use my power to dominate people. And the Yoga Sutras and all the Indic systems, the Upanishads tell you that the deeper I'm anchored, there's a field that I create around me. You can sense it, Abhishek, when you go and meet people who are really anchored, you feel the air around them is different,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
right? The ambience is different. Like we say, the mahal changes, right? And they're not asking you anything, they're just being there. And you become quiet and so on. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever gone to Tiruvannamalai.
Not yet. No.
Oh, you should go, yeah. There's a room in which Ramana Maharishi used to. That room is available for people to go and meditate in. It's incredible. There's years since he's passed away. You go and sit in that room. It is a whole different, it's a sacred space. You can feel that sacredness. Yeah, it moves you so deeply. You get tears in your eyes.
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
And nothing is happening there. There's nobody.
hmm, hmm.
And yet, there is that presence. Right? Now, this is a critical starting point.
And Raghu, just to understand also, when you're saying anchoring deeply, would it mean greater and greater sensitivity of who am I being, what is
Of
happening
course,
with me,
absolutely.
and being more
Absolutely.
and
That
more
has
mindful
to
of,
be
yeah,
the
yeah,
center. That has to be a daily sadhana. It's not something that suddenly comes
right,
and things like that. It has to be a daily sadhana, which means I have to be really committed to saying, who am I as a human being first? That will get reflected in all my actions. Whether I'm a so called leader or a so called follower or an expert, whatever it is, it'll get anchored in that. It'll get reflected in that. And the moment I have to do something that goes against this grain, I will feel it.
absolutely, yeah,
Joseph
hmm,
Campbell has given
absolutely,
many
yeah,
examples of this, of how this need to be compassionate is a very fundamental human trait, and we learn how to mask it. That's why
hmm,
he
hmm,
says, somebody asks him what's the right thing to do. He says, follow your bliss.
hmm, hmm.
Beautiful.
Think, Raghu, so in the following the bliss and what you've shared, I think one of the things I'm in touch with is the tendency to complicate things. Not embracing complexity, but a lot of times with myself, but also with a lot of people around me, I see clarity suddenly disappearing, confusion coming in. And when I look at myself also, I see that sometimes I'm making it more complex than required because the fundamentals are very clearly spelled out. And just wondering if, and the times seem to be very confusing and chaotic also. So just wondering that in such confusing and chaotic times, and to me they sometimes are disorienting, which is why time to time I kind of reach out to you and say, Raghu, this is what's happening, and then you have a pointer, and which kind of helps me reorient, right? And the question I'm holding is then, is this orientation to come from elders? Is this orientation to come from sadhana? Is this orientation to come from what we are reading and the wisdom across ages? How does one stay oriented?
All of that, no? I think what you're taught when you're very young is very critical. I don't think today's schools are helping children because I'm in touch with some people who are working with challenged children or whatever is the right thing to say today. And uh, some of those children come from so-called current schools and so on. The school education system is not enabling this inner secure foundation to get formed. The school systems are disturbing this. Yeah, the homes that you have today have lost a certain continuity, right? The elders are somewhere else, they're all nuclear families, the parents are working. The child is not being given the central importance. So the current conditions themselves, plus your stupid smartphone,
Hmm,
there's tons that is being written about how bad it is for children. Okay. the people trying to bring in legislation saying you cannot have a child use this phone until they're 16 or 14 or some such thing. Because the brains get scrambled, literally. They've done enough work with this. Yeah. And there's a lot of research that is pointing to neurological damage that happens. Yeah, so if you really want to start working with it, you have to start from these kind of basics. And there are schools, there are people who are trying to do this. Hopefully it spreads. Right. In the same way, there are many attempts around. Now, Auroville is one. Yeah, my friends and I have been working on this thing called the Kudam. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. See, we were asked by the Tamil Nadu government quite some time back. Suresh and Pradeep have worked with me on this. Initially, it was, I think, if I remember right, the education department. Right. And they said, how do we help these teachers, get more motivated, so on, these kind of questions. Nah? And the one that we have filmed and recorded is when we worked with the agriculture department. Earlier, we had worked with the Tamil Nadu Water Board. And that film is called Neer Unde Nilam Unde. Neer Unde means there is water. Where there is water, there is earth. And it records the whole process. So if anybody wants to take a look, they can. Now, we had exactly the same questions as you're asking, Abhishek. It's a corrupt system. There's nothing more colonized than the government. Yeah, with this terrible hierarchy, so on and so forth. And yeah, so we said, how do we work with these people? So I had done some work with village panchayats and all that before. Suresh and Pradeep had done a lot of work. So we said, let's gamble on this and say that many of the older sensibility, the systems I told you about, that the memory of those systems will still be alive. Because many people, at least 20, 30 years ago, when we started this, the first generation people in the government offices were from farmer backgrounds and all that. So that's what we did. We asked them, what's a dharmic way of doing things? And we said, let's create a kudam. Yeah, kudam in Tamil simply means a place where you come together, where the community comes together. And there are some very established rules of a kudam. Yeah, if I'm right, even now, the Nadar communities and many communities in the south within themselves still practice many of this. Okay. So what happens in a kudam, people come together and we added this saying, take another name. Don't call yourself Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, because then all the older hierarchical things will come. So just give yourself a name where I'm talking to you. I don't care where you come from in the department. Yeah, what is this thing? We're all here together as human beings to see what's the right thing to do. Those are all the fundamental things of a kudam. In a kudam, you're supposed to set aside your roles, come there as human beings because there's a common problem to be solved. Okay, I've seen panchayats operate like this about 40, 45 years back, where any problem, the whole community, everybody who has a say in that problem have to be there. Okay, this panchayat of these 5, 6 people are sitting there, but they're just making sure that the dialogue that happens has a certain quality. They're not using power to say this is the right thing, wrong thing. Okay, and in the kudam space, right, there is no hierarchy. Everybody is given equal thing and they all dialogue and discuss, and sometimes you have very forceful discussions and all that. All of it focused on saying what's the right thing to do. If you do this, what will happen to me? What will happen to you? So you're asking dharmic questions. In doing what I'm doing, what am I really doing? How does it help me and help you simultaneously? Yeah, in traditional homes, if you remember, there's a central courtyard, right, in which there'll be either a tulasi or a figure of a goddess. These are all spaces which many traditional people will remember. The whole family comes together. When they come together for an important question, roles and hierarchies are set aside. Right? So the karta will come and ask a question. What's the critical thing to do? This is what's happening in the world, vagara, vagara. And there's a dialogue. Sometimes it finishes there, sometimes it'll go all over the place. Yeah, come back, and then they gather again when a consensus has been reached. The consensus, different people will be there. Now, some uncle will be important in there, somebody else. So they come together, bring the consensus, and some of these elders will sit together. This is what is to be done. And then the karta will announce, saying, okay, this is what we will do. Once he says that, the dialogue is over, everybody accepts, they go back to their roles and executes this fundamental idea through their roles. We said this process is not forgotten. That was the gamble. So they gathered this group together, and you can see in this film some of the ways in which we help them remember and go back to this dharmic core that they had. The results were amazing. Yeah, everybody remembered what this dharmic question is. What is dharma? We didn't have to explain. Right? They knew it. And it struck them that, yeah, why am I holding this position? Okay, so the water department we worked with, for example, they came up with a declaration, which is amazing. They said, we are not PWD engineers looking after some water, something. We are people here to make sure that there is water for the next generation. Or something like this. Yeah. What a phenomenal shift of a self-definition. Right? This is what I'm saying when I'm saying that leadership starts with the being. Who am I? Am I this guy hanging on to this job? No, I am this person who is responsible for the water security of my district or whatever I'm in control of for the next generation. So what a width of thinking, right? Who taught them? Nothing, yeah. We didn't tell them do this. They came up with this thing. When we discussed, who are you now? Why are you in this job? What's your opportunity in this job? Yeah. So when these kinds of inner shifts happen, then the way they use their resources, they know better than us how to use all the power they have, these various governmental, there are some hundreds of schemes. They know exactly how to use them. And the whole way in which they work changes. Yeah. Now, the next question you'll ask is, has this been sustained? It's sustained for 10, 12 years or so, because the film that we're taking, we shot, this documentary, is about 10 years after we worked with the water department. And you'll see people there saying, this is what happened. They're telling about the old story and how we need to revive it in the agriculture. Because the person who worked with us in the water department was shifted to head the agriculture department. So he called us in. Right? So he talks about it also. Okay. He says, I, as an IAS officer here, have to be willing to give up my power and share it with people. So the moment the person at the head, so-called leader, is replaced by somebody who says, no, this dharmic thing and all that is nonsense, I have to get my promotion, he starts putting a block in the system. People resisted it for quite some time. And then the political system changed, all that happened. But it sustained for more than a decade, Abhishek. We've done this in many places in India. Okay, Suresh and Pradeep have used this methodology to work in insurrection areas in Northeast, just after the insurrection. It's worked, right? So this willingness to be human, the willingness to be dharmic is there in human beings. And I'm sure if we are left alone without everyday advertisements saying that unless I have Cadbury's chocolate, and unless I have a whitening cream, and unless I have Coca-Cola, I'm not a happy guy. We would all make the right choices.
True.
So my offering to you is this way of being dharmic is natural. Otherwise, what we couldn't have done a thing, yeah. 2, 3 of us going standing there doing a training program, nothing would have happened, right? Unless this is there in their heart. They just understood. Once they understood and shifted their being, what they were located in, everything happened magically, phenomenal results. We worked with places which are in the Naxalite areas near Orissa.
Hmm.
Many
Yeah.
changes have happened. Okay, it's such a wide variety of places, and all over India, there is still a memory of these systems. There is still a memory of what is dharmic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you give it space, it works. And I have a feeling the colonizing influence, the colonizing mind, will not give space for it because it is dangerous for personal power.
Yeah. I'll feel threatened by a collective power
Of
forming, a
course, it
collective
is
intelligence
by
forming.
collective power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, imagine
yeah.
everybody saying, I'll drink water instead of Coca Cola. Your
Hmm.
GDP will go down, yeah.
Yes, yes. The incentives are not aligned there. Yeah. Look, I wanted to move from here, and we've covered this whole journey of being located as human first, making choices, being sensitive to what's going on within, and also orienting ourselves from not only the elders, not only from scriptures, not only from sadhana, but also, like you said, now from a collective dialogue about what is the right thing to do, which you shared
Yeah.
in Kudam. To bring this also to a point of closure or a point where we can pause. Um, is there a framework or a frame? So when I am located, what I'm gathering is that who I am being solves for the how and the choice making. I don't have to think how to choose or what to do. But when I'm anchored in this space, what the world, the way it shows up, it becomes clear
I will use
what
it
needs to
correctly.
be done.
Yeah. I'll use it correctly. I won't, I'll know that I need water. I don't need sugar,
Right,
colored
right.
sugar things. I'll know that I need to eat simple, good food and not for my tongue.
And for my own people also, that for them also I have to make sure or I have to bring these possibilities so that there's thriving and flourishing, like you shared.
It will happen, no, Abhishek? It will happen. See, I'll tell you another very, very sad joke. Okay. The person who did the documentation, Kailasam, my very good friend, unfortunately passed away a few years back. He is from the engineering college. So we went and showed this film in his college. Fairly big audience had come because he's a very well-known filmmaker and so on. And there was a discussion that followed because we said we're only going to show this film if there's a discussion afterwards. So, what's the first question? First question is, what is the dharma you're talking about? Okay, so Kailasam took quite a bit of time to explain what it was. So this whole thing happened, and then people nodding their heads, some people saying, no, 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 this is not practical. No, all this kind of educated people's responses, no? English educated people's responses type. Now, the important thing is when they went out, there was this peon who was standing there who knew Kailas very well. Then he said in Tamil, Enna padichavanga sir, which means what kind of educated people they are. You're spending 10 minutes to explain a word like dharmam to them. Urupadvangla, he says, what will happen to this land? What will happen to them? How will they flourish? That's the tragedy, yeah. And I'm not saying this is unique to India. I think this natural feeling for other human beings is there. It can be brought back, brought forth, and it will flourish. Okay. You were saying democracy. We have no democracy, man. Yeah. Noam Chomsky is right. It's all uh, doctored, no? It's manufactured consent. It's not real democracy. So this thing of power, hegemonic power, and so on, and the colonizing mind is the critical thing. And once people get so called educated, they also seem to get colonized into thinking that I must work for myself, I must work for, you know, 4 houses and so many crores in the bank, and so on and so forth. That is the meaning of success.
I think what you also shared is a pathway on how, through awakening to oneself, deepening self-awareness, and kind of saying yes to the choices, the dharmic choices, right? Like you said, that where it's almost like each of us has seeds of both, and which ones do we pay attention to will
Of course,
flower.
of course.
And that done on an ongoing basis by a group of people that also collectively uh, dialogues about what is the right thing to do. I think slowly that's how dharma kind of rises from an individual to a collective and then into the society. I think that's
Yeah.
what I'm gathering
See,
as
the
a
reason why I
pathway.
gave you the example of the government department is there was no change in the system.
The system was same, but the people
The
became
system and the
dharmic,
rules
right?
were the same. The people used it. They used the same system in a way that, you know, they got incredible results. Yeah. There was nothing else that was changed. Just this person who said, what is my role? What's my reason for being? The moment he said that, he asks the second question: how can I use my power, right, in a way that serves this reason for being? My earlier reason for being is hold on to your job, be scared, all of this. My new reason for being is making sure, like the all traditional uh, ideas, now, can I make decisions that will ensure that 7 generations flourish? The moment I shift my being to saying that is my real reason for being born, for being in this job, everything changes.
True. And my gut feel is that if that being is truly located in it, it's not a trade-off. I think flourishing of
There's
now
no
and
trade off.
future both are possible
There's no trade off.
because there's
Nobody
creativity
lost his
unlocked and
job,
yeah,
right? None of these people lost their job. The IAS officer, Mr. Nair, who was there, flourished, and so on. Yeah. The sad thing is, whoever took over didn't have this shift in their being, didn't have the shift somewhere inside. That's it.
absolutely. And I think that's the possibility that sits in front of us if we are able to do this. More and more of us are able to do this. I think that seems like a pathway also to what seems possible. And also just wondering if this is a good time to pause the second conversation and set stage for the third one where we can go more granular on the specific practices, the specific applications, and the so what. But any final thoughts, Raghu, before we close?
See, I'm just, I like the way you helped this dialogue to progress. So we've come to this point, and I think it's important for people to realize that you can't bring systemic changes first. No? All they have to do is, look at the communist system on one side and the capitalist so-called systems on the other side. What's the difference? Nothing. The form looks different, but the fundamentals of the exploitation and all of that have not changed at all. The destruction to the earth hasn't changed at all. The only possibility is for a lot of people to have this inner change. Yeah. J. Krishnamurti calls this an inner mutation. Yeah. And he says if you really look at the world around and feel the sorrow of what's being created and that all of humanity is the same as me, you will make this change. Yeah, in this government department, we didn't even talk heavy philosophy. Yeah? We just asked them, what is your dharma? They hadn't forgotten the meaning of this word. They had forgotten the Kudam practices. In fact, all over Southeast Asia, when Suresh has talked about these things, we found that those practices were there. There were people who
Hmm,
were
hmm,
Fortunately, in India, it's not been wiped out completely.
hmm.
Okay, let me add that as a caution. It's not been wiped out as yet. But with the penetration of television, with the penetration of the so-called stupid smartphone, yeah, the chances of pushing the idea of individual, the idea of, you know, individual success at the cost of earth, the cost of other people, that idea might grow. Yeah, and that idea, like Wilson says, is the cause of the crisis.
Yeah.
So people in power, people so-called leaders, ought to wake up, use the immense power, the immense resources they have, completely different way, and not like Elon Musk. No, we have colonized the Earth. Now let's go and colonize the Moon,
Hmm. Hmm.
or whatever, Mars. What's he talking about? Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a great privilege to be in a land which has this memory, and for us, we stand on so much wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual energy that I think in one way the task is easier, in one way it's also more
yeah,
responsibility, but in another way I think we are backed up by a lot of energies and
yeah,
a lot of goodness. So
yeah. By the way,
yeah.
Musk is also in a land that had all this knowledge. Yeah, there's this picture that's just behind me
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
of
Hmm.
the Native American chief.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
saying anything very different from what I'm saying.
Right. Right. Yeah. True. True. The
They
first
had
people
this
in native
grounded
cultures all
knowledge.
over have
Yeah,
this
but
knowledge.
it's
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
it's been quite genocidally Semiocide, the new word, no?
The
Called
semiocide is the end.
Semiocides. First Nations people of the Turtle Island
Hmm. Hmm.
and their semiology and
Hmm.
their wisdom
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
completely marginalized. And what I'm saying
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
at all different from what any of them is saying. I
Right.
don't think
Right.
it's different from what the Maoris say or any of the indigenous people.
Yeah, I think these voices all over the world need to start, and they are, I think, through every conversation, through
Hopefully they are.
yeah,
Hopefully.
every interaction, every action. I think slowly there is an emergence, and great to be a part of that emergence and this moment as well. So thank you, Raghu. Thank you for your time, and thank you
Thank
for this
you.
beautiful, enriching
Thank you.
conversation. And we shall continue this in the third of this series, where we talk
Sure.
about specifics, applications, practices, and the so what, as we say, of this conversation. So thanks a lot,
Sure.
and see you in the next one.